Good afternoon, beloveds. It's Saturday afternoon, and Dante just bolted. But we are here to do Reading the Bible Again for the First Time by Marcus J. Borg. We are going to finish up the Hebrew Testament today. We are doing the chapter on reading Israel's wisdom again. I am doing this because Reverend Jesse is teaching his Bible wisdom class, and this is his preferred textbook, which is, and also because it's just a really good book. I very much enjoy it. I will remind you, I am a Science of Mind practitioner / minister, have been for almost 10 years now. Well, I've been a practitioner for over 10 years and a minister for almost 10 years. And I also have an undergraduate degree in anthropology, so you get both. You get the minister and the archaeologist and / anthropologist perspective coming from this, along with the years of biblical scholarship that Marcus put in. So it is not a clean reading because I will read you the notes and I will give you some commentary. And I do this also for Creative Life Spiritual Center. Our website is creativelife.org. We have an email, info@creativelife.org. We're also on most of the social medias, either as Creative Life Spiritual Center or Creative Life Spark. And I am the running Rev Ryan across the social medias that I am on. So if you're looking for any other kind of content, that's where we are. So we are reading chapter 7. So we will finish up the Hebrew Testament. I may or may not, depending on how tomorrow goes, tackle the chapter 8 tomorrow, because he's going to go ahead and leap into the Christian Testament a little bit earlier than I was ready. So I was 3 weeks ahead, and now I'm not. Okay, so chapter 7, reading Israel's wisdom again. In Israel's wisdom literature, we encounter the dailiness of life in ancient Israel. The focus of this literature is more on the individual and the world of every day than what we encounter in the Exodus and prophetic traditions. Its central concerns are the eminently practical questions of how shall I live and what is life about, which all of us need the answers to. Israel's wisdom is extraordinarily rich. It ranges from the practical and pithy wisdom sayings of the book of Proverbs through the melancholic reflections about life's mysteries in Ecclesiastes to the anguished and magnificent book of Job. It covers everything from sage advice about raising children to deeply reflective thought about the nature of reality and the meaning of life. Its voices are diverse and provocative. And we have note 1. The most accessible introduction to Israel's wisdom literature is Catherine M. O'Connor, The Wisdom Literature, from 1988. Other books I found especially helpful are James Crenshaw, Old Testament Wisdom, an Introduction. That's also in 1998. Roland Murphy, The Tree of Life, an Exploration of Biblical Wisdom Literature, 2nd edition, 1996. Roland and Murphy, Elizabeth Heweiler, New International Biblical Commentary, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs, 1999. Leo Perdue, Wisdom and Creation, The Theology of Wisdom Literature, 1994. You also should know, and he may or may not tell you this, that the Proverbs and Psalms are from the Semitic people. They are not exclusive to the Hebrew people. They are collections of sayings from the region, the area, not just the Hebrew people. So you see some stuff that's not exclusively Hebrew, but was included because it's part of that regional and that era's wisdom. So that's just something that I know from the variety of classes that I've taken. He may or may not say that. So, all right, moving on into his introduction. Israel's wisdom books are found in the third and final division of the Hebrew Bible, the writings. This is a miscellaneous collection dating primarily from the post-exilic period. In addition to the wisdom books of Proverbs, Ecclesiastics, and Job, this section of the Bible also includes the Psalms, Israel's prayer and hymn book, the apocalyptic book of Daniel, the stories of heroic Queen Esther, and the good gentlewoman Ruth, the erotic love poetry of the Song of Songs, sometimes called the Song of Solomon, or Canticles, and the historical books of 1 and 2 Chronicles, Ezra, and Nehemiah. The wisdom books are difficult to date with precision, largely because they contain no reference to historical events contemporary with them by which they might be dated. Indeed, in striking contrast to both the law and the prophets, they do not refer even to historical events from Israel's past. History, whether secular or sacred, is not one of their concerns. All right, here we have note 2. For a persuasive argument that Israel's wisdom tradition is centered in God as creator, see Leo Perdue, Wisdom and Creation, 1994. From ancient times, Israel's wisdom has been associated with King Solomon, who reigned in the 10th century BCE. Much of the book of Proverbs is attributed to him. The book of Ecclesiastics claims him as its author, and the apocryphal Wisdom of Solomon is named after him. But there is a scholarly consensus that these books did not come from the time of Solomon. Thus, the connection to Solomon is traditional, as are the connections between the Pentateuch and Moses, and between the Psalms and David, and without any historical significance. Wisdom literature finds us not in Solomon's day then, but in the post-exilic period that began in 539 BCE. Though the book of Proverbs is a collection of sayings, no doubt contains some earlier material, in its present form, it is a post-exilic composition put together around 500 BCE. The Book of Job is most commonly seen as an exilic or post-exilic document, though a few scholars would date it in the 7th century BCE. The Book of Ecclesiastics is the latest, commonly dated in the 3rd century BCE. During these centuries, the Jewish people continued to live under the political control of foreign empires. Under the Persian Empire until its conquest by Alexander the Great in 333 BCE, and then under the Hellenistic empires descended from Alexander. Jewish political independence was not regained until the time of the Maccabees in 164 BCE. At the beginning of this period, we should imagine the Jewish community in the land of Israel as a very modest in size and mostly clustered around Jerusalem. The temple in Jerusalem was the political as well as religious center of the community. That's good to know. Because theirs was a province in a foreign empire, the Jewish people had no king, of course. Thus, domestic political authority as well as national religious identity gravitated to the temple and its high priest. Over time, a native aristocracy emerged around the temple, consisting mostly of the families from whom a high priest had been chosen. The Jewish people were in the process of becoming a temple state and a theocracy. a society ruled by God through God's priests and scribal interpreters. We also need to imagine a religious community seeking to consolidate its identity and preserve its traditions. During this period of exceptional activity, the Pentateuch was put into its present form, including both consolidation and subcreation of legal traditions. The prophets, as a collection of books, took shape, and most or all of the writings were composed. It is an impressive literary and religious accomplishment for a small group of people. Israel's wisdom traditions also include two books found in the Christian Apocrypha, but not in the Hebrew Bible. The first is known by several names: Sirach, or the Wisdom of Ben Sira, or Ecclesiasticus. And we have note 3. Usually abbreviated as either Sir or Eccles. Note how close the latter is to the common abbreviation of Ecclesiastes. Okay, so the first one is abbreviated as ECCLUS, whereas Ecclesiastics is ECCLES. Interesting. Okay. Let's see. This book was written quite late in the post-exilic period, probably between 200 and 180 BCE, and its author was a Jewish wisdom teacher in Jerusalem named Jesus ben Sira, or Jesus son of Sirach. The Wisdom of Solomon, the second apocryphal wisdom book, was written even later, commonly dated to the 1st century BCE, and perhaps even the early 1st century CE. Its author is unknown. As a part of the Christian Apocrypha, these two books are seen as sacred scripture by Catholic, Orthodox, and Anglican Christians, but not by most Protestants. Though they contain very interesting material, we will focus on the 3 wisdom documents included in the Hebrew Bible: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. Israel's wisdom literature is very different in content, tone, and form from the Pentateuch and the prophets. Its subject matter, as mentioned earlier, is more concerned with the individual. It looks at the individual as embedded within family and kingship systems and society. However, so it is not individualistic in the modern American sense of the term. Which definitely read as a criticism, at least on my part, of the rugged individualism of the American term, because the American term tends to downplay the role that society plays, whereas in the wisdom literature, this is definitely about how an individual is supposed to live in community. The rugged individualism of America, the American sense, just doesn't believe in community at all, which is a fallacy because we are social creatures. We need community. So, but yeah, that's my criticism. So, okay. But unlike the rest of the Hebrew Bible, it is not concerned with Israel's sacred story as a people or with the criticism and reshaping of the social order. Its tone and form are so different, it does not claim to be the product of divine revelation, but is grounded in observation and reflection upon the human experience. Okay, which is super important, that it doesn't claim to be divine revelation. Sorry, knocked my lid down. Unlike the laws of the Pentateuch, which are said to have come from God, and unlike the prophets, who claim to speak the word of the Lord on God's behalf, Israel's wisdom does not claim to be revealed truth. Instead, wisdom is insight based on experience, which is probably where I got my definition of wisdom. Knowledge plus application, experience. Sometimes, as in the short sayings of the book of Proverbs, wisdom is crystallized experience, compact insights about how to live, generated by long experience of the world, as a product of the community's experience over the centuries. Proverbs is thus, to a large extent, community wisdom. That's what I mean, how an individual lives in community. Ecclesiastics and Job, on the other hand, are sustained reflections on experience from the vantage point of their particular authors. But all three books are based on observation of life. They say, in effect, this is what life is like. As we explore these books, we will not only taste the riches of Israel's wisdom tradition, but also become aware of the intense and probing dialogue, even a conflict within it. Is life as simple as knowing the right things to do and doing them? Does everything work out if you live right? And if life is not quite so simple, but much more mysterious, what does that say about the nature of God, the purpose of life, and how we are to live? Interesting. So we're going to start with Proverbs. The book of Proverbs has 31 chapters and falls into two main parts. The first part, made up of the first 9 chapters, is a series of wisdom poems that might be labeled in praise of wisdom. Most of the rest of the book is a collection of individual proverbs, the short, memorable sayings that give the book its name. Not the work of one person, the pithy proverbs of the second part are the accumulated sayings of generations of wisdom teachers. The wisdom poems in Proverbs 1 through 9. The poems in the first part of the book introduce us to the central metaphor of Israel's wisdom tradition, life as a way or a path. They abound with images related to moving along that path, walking, running, following, stumbling, falling. The poems develop the metaphor by contrasting two paths, the wise way and the foolish way, the path of wisdom and the path of folly. Other contrasting pairs are also used, the way of righteousness and the way of wickedness, the way of life, the way of death. The book as a whole develops the choice between the two ways. The foundation and starting place of the wise way is announced in the final chapter. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Note 4, which is Proverbs 1:7. The phrase fear of the Lord does not mean fright, as one might be frightened of a tyrannical ruler or parent. Rather, it refers to awe, wonder, and reverence in the presence of the one who is the maker of heaven and earth and the Lord of life and death. The beginning of wisdom lies in taking seriously that we are dealing with a reality that transcends the world of every day, even as that reality is known in the world of the everyday. These chapters also introduce us to the personification of wisdom in female form, commonly called the wisdom woman or Sophia. Sophia is not only the Greek word for wisdom, as a woman's name, it better expresses the personification than the more abstract and neutral sounding wisdom. Wisdom / Sophia is of inestimable worth. Inestimable worth. Following her is the wise way, and that it leads to life, riches, honor, peace, and happiness. And he's about to treat us to one of the poems here. Happy are those who find wisdom and those who get understanding. Her income is better than silver, her revenue better than gold. She is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand. In her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who lay hold of her. Those who hold her fast are called happy. Note 5. That is Proverbs 3:13 through 18. She is first introduced in 1:20 through 33, where she speaks like a prophet. So important is wisdom, Sophia, that she is spoken of as having been with God at the creation of the world. The Lord created me at the beginning of God's work, the first of God's acts long ago. Ages ago I was set up at the first, before the beginning of earth. Which is Prophets 8:22 through 23. The poem, which continues through verse 31, stresses wisdom Sophia's presence with God at the creation. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. Before the mountains had been shaped, when God established the heavens, I was there, and so forth. Wisdom, Sophia, offers food and drink. She hosts a banquet of bread and wine to which she invites all who will come. You who are simple, turn in here. Come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. Lay aside immaturity and live and walk in the way of insight. And this is Proverbs 9:4 through 6. The banquet passage begins in 9:1. This personification at the first stage of a process whereby wisdom Sophia becomes a female image for God in Jewish wisdom literature. We have note 8. Other primary texts in the Jewish wisdom tradition, Seer 24, Wisdom of Solomon 7:7 through 8, 7.7 through 8:16, especially 7:22 through 8:1, and chapter 10. This development is the background for the New Testament's use of Sophia imagery to speak about Jesus as prophet of Sophia and as incarnation of Sophia. It is also the basis for the increasing attention paid to Sophia in recent Christian theology. Okay. For my chapter-length treatment of Sophia imagery and its application to Jesus, see Meeting Jesus Again for the First Time, chapter 5. There is a second personification in these poems, namely the Way of Folly, as personified as the strange woman or the alien woman. Often portrayed as an adulteress and seductress, she has an appeal that is described with remarkable literary elegance and psychological astuteness. Note 10. See the seduction scenario in Proverbs 7:6 through 23. Other relevant texts are 2:16 through 19, 5:3 through 14. Not only does she invite people to follow a way, but she mimics Sophia. With the same words, she too calls people to her house and banquet. You who are simple, turn in here. This is note 11. For her banquet, see Proverbs 9 13 through 18. The invitation is in 9:16. But her way leads to folly, wickedness, and death. These two personifications symbolize the two ways of which the books of Proverbs as a whole speaks. Okay. Following Sophia and the way of wisdom leads to life. For whosoever finds me finds life and obtains favor from the Lord. But those who miss me injure themselves. All who hate me love death. That is Proverbs 8, 35 and 36. Following the alien woman, on the other hand, leads to death. Do not let your hearts turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. For many are those she has laid low, and numerous are her victims. Her house is the way to Sheol, going down to the chambers of death. Note 13. That is Proverbs 7, 25 through 27. See also 2:16 and 19, 5, 3 through 14, and 9:18. To avoid a possible misunderstanding, it is important to emphasize that the Jewish tradition did not yet affirm an afterlife. Belief in heaven and hell beyond death was still 2 or 3 centuries in the future. Note 14. The first unambiguously clear affirmation of an afterlife is in Daniel. See chapter 12, a book commonly dated around 165 BCE. Thus, the two ways, one leading to life and the other leading to death, are not about eternity about heaven and hell, but about the two different of ways of living this side of physical death. Proverbs chapter 10 through 30. We turn now to a collection of individual proverbs that fill the rest of the book. Generally speaking, proverbs are short, wise sayings designed to be memorable. To use a definition attributed to the Spanish author Cervantes, proverbs are short sentences founded upon long experience and containing a truth. And as observations about life, proverbs are typically indicative rather than imperative statements, though an imperative is implied. One of the best non-biblical examples of a proverb is "A stitch in time saves 9." Short, rhythmical, and using repeating sounds, it is easy to remember. For a masterful exposition on how this proverb works, see John Dominic Crossan in Fragments, The Aphorisms of Jesus, page 12 through 13. And that was from 1983. Moreover, though it uses an image from sewing, it obviously refers to more than sewing. Finally, though the sentence is indicative, the imperative is clear. Make the stitch in time. We can only speculate about the origin of the proverbs collected together in the second part of the book of Proverbs. Some probably originated within family and village life. Others may have been the product of sages, teachers of wisdom. And some were borrowed from other cultures. Okay, I knew I'd seen that somewhere. And this is note 16. Notably, Proverbs 22, 17 through 24, 22, a collection that borrows freely from an Egyptian wisdom text known as the Instruction of Amenemope. As a completed collection in the post-exilic period, they may have been taught in schools for young men of the upper classes. The method of instruction would have been oral, of course, and we might imagine the teacher saying the first line of the Proverbs and the students responding in unison with the second line. These Proverbs are like snapshots depicting the wise and foolish ways announced in the wisdom poems of the first 9 chapters. The best way to understand what they are and how they work is to look at a number of them, which means I'm going to stop and take a pause. Ooh. Proverbs characterized by elegance and humor. I have chosen some proverbs to illustrate central themes and others because of their linguistic elegance and occasional humor. In the latter category, on a miscellany of subjects. The words of a whisperer are like delicious morsels. They go down into the inner parts of the body. 18:8, repeated in 26:22. Like vinegar on a wound is one who sings to a heavy heart. 25:20. The legs of a disabled person hang limp. So does a proverb in the mouth of a fool. 26:7. Like a dog that returns to its vomit is a fool who reverts to his folly. 26:11. As the door turns on its hinges, so does a lazy person in bed. 26:14. Whosoever blesses a neighbor with a loud voice rising early in the morning will be counted as cursing. 27:14. Like somebody who takes a passing dog by the ears is one who meddles in the quarrels of another. 26:17. Proverbs dealing with children and family. A repeated message in these proverbs concerns the importance of training children in the paths of wisdom. For example, train children in the right way, and when old, they will not stray. 22:6. Physical discipline is a part of training. One of the best known proverbs is spare the rod, spoil the child. In its full form, it reads, those who spare the rod hate their children, but those who love them are diligent to discipline them. 13:24. The same theme is sounded in several more passages. Do not withhold discipline from your children. If you beat them with a rod, they will not die. 23:13. Folly is bound up in the heart of a boy, but the rod of discipline drives it far away. 22:15. Blows that wound cleanse away evil. Beating makes clean the innermost parts. 20:30. The book of Proverbs also contains a number of sayings about difficult wives and good wives. These sayings disclose the androcentric perspective of the book and the Bible as a whole, for that matter. There are no sayings about good or difficult husbands. Mentioned often is the contentious or quarrelsome wife. A wife's quarreling is a continual dripping of rain, 19:13. A continual dripping on a rainy day and a contentious wife are alike, 27:15. It is better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a contentious wife. 21:9, repeated in 25:24. It is better to live in a desert land than with a contentious and fretful wife. 21:19. The sages also knew about good wives. A good wife is the crown of her husband. 12:14. He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. 18:22. House and wealth are inherited from parents, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. 19:14. The ideal wife is the topic of the anachronistic poem that concludes the book as a whole. She bears a remarkable resemblance to the wisdom woman of chapters 1 through 9. Okay, hang on. We've got note 17. Proverbs 31, 10 through 31. An acrostic poem is one in which each line begins with the successive letter of the alphabet. In this case, of course, the Hebrew alphabet. Okay, I did not know that. That's nice to know. Proverbs dealing with wealth and poverty. The book of Proverbs has much to say about wealth and poverty. In general, prosperity is seen as the result of following the wise way. The attitude towards poverty is more complex. If possible, poverty is to be avoided, of course. The wealthy are urged to be generous to the poor, but sometimes the poor are virtually blamed for their poverty. It hasn't changed much in 2,200 years. Some proverbs are simply observations about the way things are for the poor with no value judgment other than sympathy implied. The poor are disliked even by their neighbors, but the rich have many friends. 14:20. Wealth brings many friends, but the poor are left friendless. 19:4. If the poor are hated even by their kin, how much more are they shunned by their friends? 19:7. Some proverbs recognize that wealth is not good in and of itself, and that in some circumstances, poverty is better. Better is a dinner of vegetables where love is than a fatted ox and hatred with it. 15:17. Better is a little with righteousness than large income with injustice. 16:8. Better to be poor and walk in integrity than be crooked in one's ways, even though rich. 28:16. Those who trust in their riches will wither, but the righteous will flourish like green leaves. 11:28. One saying affirms that both wealth and poverty can be dangerous snares. Give me neither poverty nor riches, feed me with the food that I need, or I shall be full and deny you, and say, who is the Lord? Or I shall be poor and steal and profane the name of my God. 30:8 through 9. The poor are to be treated compassionately in language that anticipates Jesus's parable of the sheep and the goats. What one does to or for the poor is done to God. And this is note 18. Matthew 25:31 through 46. The major point of the parable, whatever is done for the least of these, the hungry, thirsty, strangers, naked, sick, imprisoned, is done to Jesus. Those who oppress the poor insult their Maker, but those who are kind to the needy honor God. 14:31. Those who mock the poor insult their Maker. 17:5. Whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord and will be repaid in full. 19:17. Thus, the wise will be generous to the poor. Those who are generous are blessed, for they share their bread with the poor. 22:9. Whoever gives to the poor will lack nothing, but one who turns a blind eye will get many a curse. 28:27. Though none of the sayings directly blames the poor for their poverty, the frequent association of prosperity with wisdom, diligence, industry, and prudence, and of poverty with foolishness, laziness, and drunkenness comes close. The lazy person, the sluggard, an older translation, is one of the villains of Proverbs, and in the first part of the book, the lazy person is told to learn a lesson from the ant. Go to the ant, you lazy bones, consider its ways and be wise. Without having any chief or officer or ruler, it prepares its food in summer and gathers its sustenance in harvest. How long will you lie there, O lazy bones? When will you arise from your slumber? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed robber. 6 through 11, the last three lines are also in 24:34. Other sayings make the connection between laziness and poverty. A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. 10:4. Do not love sleep, or else you will come to poverty. Open your eyes, and you will have plenty of bread. 20:13. An idle person will suffer hunger. 19:15. Drunkenness also leads to poverty. The drunkard and the glutton will come to poverty, and drowsiness will clothe them with rags. 23:21. More broadly, failure to follow the way of wisdom produces poverty. The Lord does not let the righteous go hungry. 10:3. Anyone who tills the land will have plenty of bread, but one who follows worthless pursuits will have plenty of poverty. 28:19. Misfortune pursues sinners, but prosperity rewards the righteous. 13:21. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to want. 21:5. There is some truth in these observations, of course. Laziness and folly and drunkenness often do produce poverty and want. But the corollary, that poverty is always the product of these, is not true, though Proverbs comes close to drawing that inference. Okay. Proverbs dealing with the rewards of right living. The book of Proverbs affirms with great frequency and confidence that following the way of wisdom will bring rewards. This is such a central theme of the book and so important for understanding as an ongoing tension within Israel's wisdom tradition that I report, at the risk of tedious repetition, a selection of proverbs extolling the rewards of virtue. A reminder, these sayings do not have an afterlife in mind. They are speaking about this life. The Lord's curse is on the house of the wicked, but God blesses the abode of the righteous. 3:33. The blessings of the Lord make rich. 10:22. What the wicked dread will come upon them, but the desire of the righteous will be granted. When the tempest passes, the wicked are no more, but the righteous are established forever. 10:24 through 25. Oh, goodness. We've got an entire page of these. The fear of the Lord prolongs life, but the years of the wicked will be short. 10:27. The righteous will never be removed, but the wicked will not remain in the land. 10:30. Righteousness delivers from death. 11:4. The righteous are delivered from trouble, and the wicked get into it instead. 11:8. Whosoever is steadfastly righteous will live, but whosoever pursues evil will die. 11:19. Be assured, the wicked will not go unpunished, but those who are righteous will escape. 11:21. The good obtain favor from the Lord, but those who devise evil God condemns. 12:2. The wicked are overthrown and are no more, but the house of the righteous will stand. 12:7. No harm appears to the righteous, but the wicked are filled with trouble. 12:21. Those who despise the word bring destruction on themselves, but those who respect the commandment will be rewarded. 13:13. The house of the wicked is destroyed, but the tent of the upright flourishes. 14:11. The perverse get what their ways deserve, and the good what their deeds deserve. 14:14. In the house of the righteous there is much treasure, but trouble befalls the income of the wicked. 15:6. The Lord is far from the wicked, but he hears the prayers of the righteous. 15:29. Commit your work to the Lord, and your plans will be established. 16:3. Those who keep the commandment will live. Those who are heedless of their way will die. 19:16. The reward for humility and the fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. 22:4. Do not envy the wicked, for the evil have no future. The lamp of the wicked will go out. 24:19 through 20. One who walks in integrity will be safe, but whosoever follows crooked ways will fall into the pit. 28:18. The faithful will abound with blessings. 28:20. That was a lot. Oh. Proverbs as conventional wisdom. The repetition of this theme has a rhetorical foundation, of course. The purpose of Proverbs is to extol the importance of the path of wisdom. And it does this by affirming again and again, follow this way and your life will go well. The cumulative effect of the repetition, Proverbs becomes a book of conventional wisdom, or at least the most common way of reading Proverbs turns it into conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom is at the heart of every culture and of most subcultures. Okay. As I use the term, it always has two defining meanings. On the one hand, conventional wisdom is cultural wisdom, or community wisdom, or folk wisdom. It is what everybody knows or should know. It is collective wisdom, the consensus of the culture or community about how life should be lived. Its subject matter is vast, covering everything from etiquette to central values to images of the good life. Included within what everybody knows is the second definition. Included within what everybody knows is the second defining feature of conventional wisdom, the notion of rewards for living life right. Not only is this claim that virtue will be rewarded central to Proverbs, it is the core of all forms of conventional wisdom, religious and secular. Follow this path and life will work out for you. Its variations are familiar in this brief sampling shows. You reap what you sow, work hard and you'll succeed, do or believe X, Y, and Z, and you'll go to heaven. People get what they deserve. What goes around comes around. Follow the Lord and you will be happy. Follow the American way of life and you'll reap the fruits of the American dream. Lose 50 pounds and you'll be happy. Conventional wisdom thus leads to a performance and reward view of life. The quality of our life depends upon our doing things right. Okay. By making this connection, conventional wisdom also images life as orderly and to that extent under control. If we follow this path, we will not end up at a dead end. There is, of course, truth in conventional wisdom. There are ways of living that do lead to dead ends. Pride often does go before a fall. Diligence, industry, honesty, humility, generosity, and integrity are virtues. Injustice, strife, deceit, and violence should be avoided. Etiquette can make dining more pleasant. Not only does conventional wisdom often contain truth, but we could not live without it. Okay. We could not live together in groups without taking for granted expectations about human behavior, ranging from the taboo against cannibalism to confidence that people will stop at stop signs. Moreover, some forms of conventional wisdom are better than others. One needs only to think of the conventional wisdom of the Third Reich versus the conventional wisdom of societies strong in human rights, or conventional wisdom about race in the United States now compared to that of 50 years ago. Well, okay, we seem to have turned the clock back a little bit on that one. So conventional wisdom and its content matter. I will remind you this was written more than 25 years ago, and well, okay. But controversial wisdom has a cruel corollary. If your life fails to work out, it must be because you have done something wrong. Trouble is your fault. Just as conventional wisdom about the importance of disciplined work can often lead to the poor being blamed for their poverty, so those for whom life is hard are often seen in their own minds or in the minds of others as responsible for their hardship. The problem posed by the corollary of conventional wisdom brings the central claims of Proverbs into question. Do things work out if you live right? Always or only sometimes? Are the righteous rewarded and the wicked punished? Always or only sometimes? Is life fair? Always, sometimes, or seldom? As noted earlier in this chapter, the wisdom literature of the Hebrew Bible does not speak with one voice on these issues. While Proverbs is fairly unambiguous, the other two wisdom books hint at randomness and chance. And if life is not so well ordered as Proverbs suggests, what does that say about how we should live? What does it say about the purpose of life? What does it say about the nature of God? These are the questions with which the authors of Ecclesiastes and Job wrestle. Proverb does fail to take into account systems. I can do absolutely everything right, but if I am caught up in a system that is designed to make sure I fail, I'm going to fail no matter what I do. Which is why social justice is a thing, because then what we have to do is work on the system that is designed to keep people from succeeding. Because trust me, I know a lot of people who live very well and are caught in systems that are crushing them. And I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, so we are going to tackle Ecclesiastes. For many modern people, Ecclesiastes is the most user-friendly book of the Hebrew Bible, and perhaps in the Bible as a whole. It requires of its readers no knowledge of Israel's history. Its language strikes people as speaking immediately to life, and its melancholic tone seems to fit the modern spirit. Most uniformly, my students report liking Ecclesiastes. Its author is, I do not even know what to do with this, Qoheleth? Qoheleth, which is not a name in Hebrew, but a title or an office. Most likely, the word means teacher, more specifically, wisdom teacher. And in this case, probably a teacher who lived in Jerusalem. The title of the book, Ecclesiastes, is the Greek word for Qoheleth. Though the words are thus interchangeable, I will follow the convention of referring to the author as Qoheleth and the book as Ecclesiastes. Well, then you're going to get a whole lot of me mispronouncing that word because I've read the book before, but you know what I mean. Okay, though Qoheleth writes as King Solomon in the first two chapters, this is clearly done for rhetorical effect rather than to reflect the actual authorship by Solomon. The book is one of the latest in the Hebrew Bible, typically dated around 300 to 250 BC. Scholarly assessments of Ecclesiastic varies greatly. Some scholars find it so unrelievedly pessimistic that they wonder how it got into the Bible. They claim that the author's skepticism about generally accepted religious conventions is so thoroughgoing as to suggest that he might well have been an atheist. Other scholars greatly admire Culoeth, not just for his honesty, but for his religious vision. Whether to think of him as a wisdom teacher gone bad, perhaps burned out, or as among the wisest of the wise is the central issue in the interpretation of this book. But before I turn to that, I will identify Cuheleth's two central metaphors and look at the themes raised in key passages of Ecclesiastics. Central metaphors. The first central metaphor is vanity of vanities. All is vanity. Not only does Cuheleth begin and end his book with this thematic metaphor, but it is a repeating refrain throughout. We have note 19. Ecclesiastes 1:2, immediately following the superscription of the book, 12:8, ending Cuheleth's words and preceding the brief epilogue, probably added by an editor. And then the next bunch of notes is just going to tell you where all of these passages are coming from. Okay. The Hebrew word translated as vanity is Hebel, Hebel. Though sometimes translated with quite abstract words, emptiness, meaningless, or absurdity, Hebel is more concrete, has more concrete literal meanings that are the basis for its metaphorical meaning in Ecclesiastics. Breath, vapor, mist, or fog. All is breath, all is vapor, all is mist, all is fog. The connotations are insubstantiality. One cannot get a hold of breath, vapor, mist, or fog. Ephemerality, insubstantial substances such as vapor come and go, and obscured vision, especially if mist or fog is emphasized. A second metaphor, chasing after wind, it also occurs frequently. That phrase is sometimes translated as herding or shepherding the wind. It is, of course, an image of futility. All right. The king's speech. The two metaphors named above are central to the opening speech of the book. From the middle of the first chapter through the end of the second book, Cuheleth speaks as King Solomon. 1:12 through 2:26. The strategy is brilliant. As the traditional father of wisdom in Israel, Solomon had an unrivaled reputation for sagacity. Moreover, he was fabled for having everything a human being might desire, not only wisdom, but power, fame, wealth, reputation, security, possessions, sensual pleasure. Solomon had everything that the conventional wisdom of most cultures desire. Cuheleth imagines Solomon turning to all these in his search for a satisfying life, but they do not satisfy. About all that conventional wisdom praises, the verdict is the same. They are vanity and chasing the wind. 10 times in the speech, one or both of the metaphors occurs. All that Solomon has is declared to be vapor or fog, insubstantial, ephemeral, unsatisfying. The final line of the speech brings the two metaphors together. All is vanity and a chasing after wind, which is Ecclesiastes 1:14, 17, 2:1, 11, 15, 17, 19, 21, 23, and 26. So apparently he repeats it a lot. The righteous, hang on. The righteous sometimes do not prosper. Solomon's speech is the first stage of Qoheleth's indictment of conventional wisdom. The next step is the rejection of conventional wisdom's central claim. If you follow the path of righteousness, the wise way, you will do well and be rewarded. In my vain life, I've seen everything. There are righteous people who perish in their righteousness, and there are wicked people who prolong their life in their evil doing. There is a vanity that takes place on earth, that there are righteous people who are treated according to the conduct of the wicked, and there are wicked people who are treated according to the conduct of the righteous. Again, I saw under the sun, and the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to the intelligent, nor favor to the skilled, but time and chance happen to them all. That is Ecclesiastes 7:15, 8:14, and 9:11. Qoheleth knows that people often suffer from oppression through no fault of their own. They are simply the victims of power. Again, I saw all the oppressions that are practiced under the sun. Look, the tears of the oppressed, with no one to comfort them. On the side of their oppressors there was power. Ecclesiastes 4:1. Qoheleth's perception of life's inequities leads to despairing statements about whether life is worthwhile at all. And I thought the dead who have already died more fortunate than the living who are still alive, but better than both is the one who has not yet been and has not seen the evil deeds that are done under the sun. That's Ecclesiastes 4:2 and 3. The specter of death. Ecclesiastes is haunted by death. The author returns to the subject again and again. He does not simply say that we are mortal. He dwells on the fact, emphasizes it. Qoheleth stresses the utter inevitability of death. We are no different from the animals. One fate waits us all. For the fate of the human and the fate of the animals is the same. As one who dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath, and humans have no advantages over the animals, for it is vanity. All go to one place, all are from the dust, and all return to dust again. Ecclesiastes 3:19 through 20. He also stresses the randomness of death. Not only are we fated to die, but the timing of our death is as random as what happens to fish and birds. For no one can anticipate the time of disaster, like fish taken in a cruel net, and like birds caught in a snare, so mortals are snared at a time of calamity, when it suddenly falls upon them. Ecclesiastes 9:12. See also 8:8. No one has the power over the day of death. The inevitability and randomness of death makes our conventional pursuits meaningless. Death comes regardless. Yet I perceived that the same fate befalls all of us. Then I said to myself, what happens to the fool will happen also to me. Why, then, have I been so very wise? And I said to myself that this is also vanity, for there is no enduring remembrance of the wise or of fools, seeing that in the days to come all will have been long forgotten. How can the wise die just like fools? So I hated life, because what is done under the sun was grievous to me, for all is vanity and a chasing of the wind. Ecclesiastes 2:14 through 17. For Cuohelith, the certainty and the randomness of death drive an arrow into the heart of conventional wisdom. Nothing that we do or have, nothing of what we spend our lives seeking to achieve, possess, or control can forestall death, can alter its inevitability or timing. Moreover, when death comes, it takes away everything we have acquired: wisdom, wealth, honor, a good name, family, or possessions. Okay. Nothing can affect this, says Cuohelith. Neither wisdom, nor righteousness, nor goodness, nor worship can change either the inevitability or the randomness of death. The righteous and the wise and their deeds are in the hand of God. Whether it is love or hate, one does not know. Everything that confronts them is vanity, since the same fate comes to all, to the righteous and the wicked, to the good and the evil, to the clean and the unclean, to those who sacrifice and those who do not sacrifice. As are the good, so are the sinners. Those who swear are like those who shun an oath. This is an evil in all that happens under the sun, that the same fate comes to everyone. Ecclesiastes 9:1 through 3. Cuohelith's case against the conventional wisdom is complete. The rewards of the conventional wisdom do not satisfy. Even Solomon, who had them all to a superlative degree, found them lacking. Reality is not organized in such a way that the righteous are rewarded and the wicked are punished. Death comes to all and comes randomly. Conventional wisdom, whether in Proverbs or elsewhere, affirms that reality is orderly. But in Cuohelith's view, God has made the world not orderly and straight, but crooked. Echoing Ecclesiastes 1:15, Elizabeth Heweiler, New International Bible Commentary, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs, page 159, comments that for Cuohelith, human experience is not meaningful, controllable, or predictable. She adds, as I also will, that for Cuohelith, human well-being and enjoyment are nevertheless possible. Cuohelith's case against conventional wisdom is complete. The rewards of conventional wisdom do not satisfy. Oh. I just read that chapter. Just read that. Hang on. Then, how to live. Like, literally, that's what it says right there. Then, how to live. If this is the way things are, then what is life about? What should we concern ourselves with? Cuohelith's answer, surprisingly simple and brief, is repeated several times for emphasis. Here are its first two appearances. Okay. Let me make sure that I am where I think I am. Yep. Okay. There is nothing better for mortals than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in their toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. I know there is nothing better for people than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. Moreover, it's God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in all their toil. In its longest form, go, eat your bread with enjoyment, and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has long ago approved of what you do. Let your garments always be white. Do not let oil be lacking on your head. Enjoy life with the wife whom you love all the days of your vain life that are given you under the sun, because that is your portion in life and your toil at which you toil under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do with all your might. Ecclesiastes 2:24, 3:12 through 13, 9:7 through 10. White garments and the act of anointing one's head with oil are associated with festive meals. See also 3:22, 5:18 through 20, and 8:15. But even this simple world-affirming advice is followed immediately by the specter of death. For there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol to which you are going. Ecclesiastes 10:19 or 9:10. Sheol does not mean hell as a place of punishment where some go. Sheol is the land of the dead where all go. Whew. Reading Ecclesiastes and hearing Qoheleth. What are we to make of this? As mentioned earlier, there is no consensus among scholars regarding how to hear Qoheleth's message. To some, his pessimism and gloom seem to speak of a world from which God is absent. His disparagement of life's common goals suggests aimlessness. His positive advice sounds difficult to distinguish from the familiar eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die. Is this really wisdom, or is this the way the world looks when someone has given up on life? As we puzzle about how to hear Qoheleth, let me suggest that context and inflection make all the difference. I invite you to imagine 3 different ways of saying and thus hearing the best known passage in Ecclesiastes. Because of its length, I will not quote it all. For everything there is... Oh, this is a song by the Byrds. I forget about that. If you haven't heard Turn, Turn, Turn by the Byrds, it's Ecclesiastes. Seriously, look it up. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. That is Ecclesiastes 3:1 through 8. First scenario. Because the words of this passage became the lyrics of a popular folk song, like I said, Turn, Turn, Turn by the Byrds, most of us have heard them sung. I remember some performances that gave the text a moral meaning, expressing a preference for one half of each set of opposites. This, not that. The inflection made it clear that this time, our time, is a time for peace, not war. A time for love, not hate. A time to heal, not kill. A time to dance, not mourn. However, I do not imagine that Qoheleth meant this. Second scenario. Imagine this passage as read by a depressed Swedish Lutheran pastor in an Ingmar Bergman movie. The church is almost empty. The cold light of a gray morning makes everything pale and colorless. The voice is flat with despair, and there is virtually no one to hear it. Life is bleak, unbearably so, an endless cycle of meaningless repetition. This is an exaggerated form of some scholarly ways of reading Ecclesiastics. Third scenario. Imagine these same words as read by the Dalai Lama. The meaning would be very different. Not this versus that, and not everything is meaningless, but rather live fully. Whatever time it is, be present to what is. Actually, that's really good advice. The only moment we have is now. Okay. Okay. The third scenario is how I hear Qo-Helith. His critique of conventional wisdom is similar to what we hear in the writings of Lao Tzu, a 6th century BCE Chinese wisdom teacher whose teaching is preserved in the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu's thought is similar to that of Buddhism, especially Zen Buddhism. Like Qo-Helith, Lao Tzu offers a radical critique of conventional wisdom. The Tao is Lao Tzu's word for both ultimate reality and the way of living in accord with it. Language cannot capture or domesticate the Tao as ultimate reality. As the opening Lao of the Tao Te Ching makes clear, the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. The Tao is thus intrinsically ineffable. Mystery with a capital M. The way of living in accord with the Tao is not grasping. Okay. The way most of us live most of the time, the way of conventional wisdom, is the way of grasping. We grasp not only by seeking to domesticate reality, but also by seeking those satisfaction that convention urges us to seek. But grasping is futile. Indeed, in Buddhism, it is the primary source of suffering. The similarities to Qo-Helith's are striking. Qo-Helith's claim that we cannot make straight what God has made crooked points to the mystery of the sacred. For Qo-Helith, God is not absent. God is simply beyond all our attempts to domesticate the divine. His central metaphors of all is vanity, vapor, mist, and fog, and chasing the wind, point to the futility of grasping. We cannot lay a hold of that which is insubstantial and ephemeral. Moreover, that which we can momentarily possess is ultimately unsatisfying. His emphasis on death also fits this way of reading Ecclesiastics. For Qo-Helith's, death is not only the specter that haunts conventional wisdom, pointing to the futility of grasping, death is also the master teacher who teaches us how to live. Oh. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For this is the end of everyone, and the living will lay it to heart. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. That's Ecclesiastes 7:2-4. The striking poem from which Qo-Helith ends the book makes the same point. Filled with images of aging and decline, it includes the line, "Remember your grave in the days of your youth." Ecclesiastic 12:1-8. The first verse is commonly translated, "Remember your Creator in the days of your youth." Several commentators note that the Hebrew word translated as creator more likely means grave or cistern as a metaphor for grave. Oh. I'm sweating. I needed to turn the fan on. We've got about 10 pages left, so I needed to get some air moving here. Oh. This injunction reflects not a melancholic, pessimistic attitude that robs even youth of its joy, but the belief that the awareness of death teaches us about what is important in life. Death is the teacher of true wisdom. In this context, Keohilith's admonishment to live the life of simplicity does not sound like a cynical or burned out eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may die. Rather, it comes across as genuine wisdom. Go, eat your bread with enjoyment and drink your wine with a merry heart. Enjoy life with the wife whom you love. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with might. Okay, we've already heard that one, which is Ecclesiastes 9:7-10. To do whatever you do with your might suggests living strongly, not tentatively, living fully, not holding back. Thus, in Ecclesiastes, life is not about pursuing the rewards promised by the path of conventional wisdom, religious or secular, but about living in the present, seeing the futility of grasping and the inevitability and yet unpredictability of death drives us into the present. Thus, I hear Keohilith's wisdom as positive and not as unrelieved pessimism. For an equally positive reading, see Kathleen O'Connor, The Wisdom Literature from 1988, pages 114-33. See her note 6 on page 123 for the citation of negative readings. That was note 36, by the way. Okay. Let's see. True wisdom means carpe diem. Seize the day. Don't miss it. Don't let it slip by unnoticed. Don't live it in the fog. Don't waste it chasing the wind. And so I see Keohilith as among the great wisdom teachers of the world. If it is not too bold a claim, I see him as a Jewish Lao Tzu. I do not think the similarities between Keohilith's thought and Eastern thought are due to cultural contact with Eastern religions. I doubt that he had any awareness of the Tao Te Ching or Buddhist teachings. Rather, I think the similarities flow out of similar reflections on human experience, perhaps even out of similar experiences of the sacred. The wisdom of Keohilith is thus a subversive wisdom. His teaching undermines and subverts the way taught by conventional wisdom. It is also an alternative wisdom, for it points to another way and one that leads beyond convention. For it points, to use a familiar phrase from Robert Frost, the subversive and alternative wisdom of Keohilith is the road less traveled. Now, we are going to tackle Job. We have about 8 pages left. Oh my goodness. You know, if I was smart, I'd have broken this up into 3 readings. Done Proverbs and then Ecclesiastes and then Job. But I didn't think about that. Instead, I'm doing this one whole block. Job. The dialogue and conflict within Israel's wisdom tradition continues in the book of Job. Radical questioning of conventional wisdom is this document's central feature. A document whose magnificent language, provocative content, and stunning climax make it one of the most remarkable books in the Bible. Job has received extraordinary accolades. Martin Luther spoke of it as a magnificent and as magnificent and sublime as no other work of Scripture. Alfred Lord Tennyson, a famous poet of the 19th century, called it the greatest poem of ancient and modern times. Another 19th century Englishman, the historian Thomas Carlyle, said that nothing has ever been written in the Bible or out of it is of equal merit. Cited by Samuel Tarrant in the Interpreter's Bible, Volume 3, page 877. As mentioned earlier, the Book of Job was probably written during the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BC or shortly thereafter. It begins with a brief prose prologue, the first 2 chapters, and concludes with an even briefer prose epilogue, 42, 7 through 17. In between is the main body of the book, cast in the form of poetry and running almost 40 chapters long. 3:1 through 42:6. The prose prologue may be an old folk tale adapted by the author of the poetic body as the framework for his work. There is no scholarly consensus about either the relationship of the prose prologue to the poetic body or the literary unity of the book as a whole. Some scholars see considerable tension between the prologue and the poetic body, and some see the poetic body itself as containing the work of more than one author. Without trying to resolve any of these questions, I will treat the book as a whole in its present form. It is common to see the Book of Job as wrestling with the problem of innocent suffering. Okay. This common view is only partially correct. On the other hand, it is true that the main character, Job, suffers intensely and does not know why. He cannot see that he has done anything to deserve the intensity of his pain and loss. On the other hand, I do not see that the author provides any answer to that question, nor, I am convinced, does he intend to do so. His purpose, I will suggest, is quite different. Okay? Let's see what he has to say. The prose prologue, chapters 1 and 2. The prologue introduces the character of Job and the situation that led to his predicament. The first verse reminds us of the once upon a time of folk tales about long ago and far away. There was once a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job. The next 2 verses tell us that he was a very good and prosperous man, one who lived the life of wisdom. He was blameless and upright, feared God, and turned away from evil. Life was going well for him. Not only a paragon of wisdom and virtue, he was blessed with 10 children and great prosperity, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 donkeys, and very many servants. Indeed, he was one of the greatest of all the people of the East. With that groundwork laid, the prologue then turns from earth to heaven, where the dramatic action of the book is set in motion. There, we are told, a meeting is held between the heavenly beings and God. Among them is a figure called Satan. Not yet the evil power opposed to God of later Jewish and Christian tradition, but a servant of God whose task is patrolling the earth as some kind of espionage agent. God brags to Satan about his righteous servant Job. There is no one like him on earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil. Which is Job 1, 6 through 12. Quoted passage is verse 8. Satan is unimpressed. After all, why shouldn't Job be faithful? God has given him everything. So Satan says to God, does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not put a fence, a positive image of protection, around him and his house, and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. Job 1, 9 through 10. Satan then challenges God to a wager. Take away everything Job has, he says, and see how faithful Job is then. God agrees, and the wager is on. Job 4:11. Wait, I think that was 1:11. Sorry. 1:11. Job 1:11. Job's life of blessedness then ends in two stages. Satan takes it away. In stage 1, Job's flocks are all stolen or destroyed. Most of his servants are killed, and his children all die as a house collapses on them. But Job's response is impeccable. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return there. The Lord gave, and Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. 41. The first calamities are narrated in Job 1:13 through 22. Quoted words are from 1:21. A whole lot of innocent people and innocent animals suffered for this. Ugh. In stage 2, Satan, with God's permission, goes after Job's own body, inflicting him with loathsome sores from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. His possessions are gone, his children dead. He is reduced to sitting among the ashes, scraping his sores with a broken piece of pottery. But he remains faithful to God. Shall we receive the good at the hands of God, or not receive the bad? And to not receive the bad. The narrator hardly needs to add, in all of this, Job did not sin with his lips. God has won the wager. The second stage is described in 2:1 through 10. Quoted words are from verse 7 and 10. If we interpret the book of Job within the framework of the question, why do the righteous suffer? The answer provided by the prologue is very strange. Job's suffering was caused by something that happened completely over his head. A wager in the heavenly council between God and one of God's servants. I doubt that Job would have been impressed with this explanation. Neither should we be. Rather, the prologue and the book have another purpose. That purpose is expressed in the question Satan asks God. Does Job fear God for nothing? The question is both provocative and profound, and it signals the author's probing of conventional wisdom. Why be religious? Why take God seriously? Is it because there is something in it for me? That is the answer of conventional religious wisdom. Ugh. Okay, hang on. Let me try that again. That is the answer of conventional religious wisdom, ancient and modern, Jewish and Christian, and as found in other religions. Follow this way. It will take you to a good place, whether internally or externally, whether in this life or the next. Its Christian forms are many. Believe in God and Jesus, and you will go to heaven, or you will prosper, or you'll have peace of mind, or you'll be fulfilled. All of these turn taking God seriously into a means to some other end. But Satan's question leads us to reflect on the central issue raised by the prologue. Is there such a thing as religion unmotivated by self-interest? What would it mean to take God seriously, not as a means, but as the ultimate end? The prologue has set another purpose as well. The prologue has another purpose as well. It sets up the dialogue between Job and his friends that fills most of the poetic main body. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar arrive at the end of the second chapter. Their purpose is to comfort Job. So shocked are they at his miserable appearance that they sit on the ground with him in silence for 7 days. The poetic dialogue between Job and his comforters. Okay. The author has structured the poetic body of the book as a series of interchanges between Job and his friends. Job speaks, then Eliphaz, Job speaks, then Bildad, Job speaks, then Zophar, then the cycle repeats itself 3 times. Though the language is often magnificent, the content is quite repetitious. Rather than expositing all 3 cycles, then I will provide the passages that illustrate the depth of Job's suffering and questioning and the core of his friends' responses. In other words, he's not going to read us the whole book. Okay, Job's torment. The portrait of Job in the prologue is responsible for the proverbial patience of Job, a phrase first used in the letter of James in the New Testament. There are a lot of notes in this one. James 5:11. As we turn now to the Job of the poetic main body, we will see that he is anything but patient. Job speaks first. His suffering is so great that he curses the day he was born. Let the day perish in which I was born, and the night that said a man-child is conceived. Let that day be darkness. Let thick darkness seize it. Let it not rejoice among the days of the year. Yes, let that night be barren. Let no joyful cry be heard on it. Why did I not die at birth, come forth from the womb and expire? Why was I not buried like a stillborn child? For my sighing comes like my bread, and my groanings are poured out like water. His first speech is in chapter 3. Quoted passages are from verses 3, 4, 6, 7, 11, 16, and 24. Job's suffering is relentless. Even sleep gives him no relief. When I lie down, I say, when shall I arise? But the night is long, and I am full of tossing till dawn. He accuses God of giving him no rest. When I say, my bed will comfort me, my couch will ease my complaint, then you terrify me with dreams and terrify me with visions, so that I would choose strangling and death rather than this body. I loathe my life. Will you not look away from me for a while? Let me alone until I swallow my spittle. Why have you made me your target? From Job's second speech, chapters 16 and 7. Quoted passages are 7, 4, 13, and 16, 19, and 20. Job cannot understand why he is suffering. He knows that he has done nothing to deserve this degree of torment and accuses God of destroying the righteous as well as the wicked. I am blameless. I do not know myself. I loathe my life. It is all the same. Therefore, I say, God destroys both the blameless and the wicked. When disaster brings sudden death, God mocks at the calamity of the innocent. Then Job addresses God directly. You know that I am not guilty, and there is no one to deliver out of your hand. Your hands fashioned and made me, and now you turn and destroy me. From Job's third speech, chapters 9 and 10. Quoted passages are 9, 21 through 23, and 10, 7, and 8. Job's friends' responses. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar consistently respond with the same refrain. You must have done something wrong. They defend the honor of God by reaffirming the claim that God rewards the righteous and punishes the wicked. Eliphaz says to Job, think now, who that was innocent has ever perished, or where were the upright cut off? As I have seen, those who plow iniquity and sow trouble reap the same. Eliphaz, who sees what is happening to Job as divine discipline, offers his advice. If I were you, he says, I would seek God, and to God I would commit my cause. God sets on high those who are lowly, and those who mourn are lifted to safety. How happy is the one whom God approves. Therefore, do not despise the discipline of the Almighty. We have searched this out. It is true. Hear and know it for yourself. 47. From Eliphaz's first speech, chapters 4 and 5, quoted passages are 4, 7, and 8, 5, 8, 11, 17, and 7. And 27. Bildad makes the same point. If you will seek God and make supplication to the Almighty, if you are pure and upright, surely then God will rouse up for you and restore you to your rightful place. God will not reject a blameless person. From Bildad's first speech, chapter 8, quoted passages are verse 5 and 6 and 20. Zophar, the third friend to speak, is beginning to lose his patience. Accusing Job of being full of talk and babble, he mocks Job and says that Job should suffer more than he already is. Does not sound like a very good friend. You say, my conduct is pure and I am clean in God's sight. That God would speak and open his lips to you and tell you the secrets of wisdom. Know then that God exacts of you less than your guilt deserves. Oh, that's funny. From Zophar's first speech, chapter 11, quoted words are from 11, 2, and 6. Subsequent section on repentance and the reversal of fortune it will bring is from verse 13 through 21. Like Eliphaz and Bildad, he also suggests that repentance is the way to get back on God's good side and bring about a reversal of Job's misfortune. Not surprisingly, Job does not find much comfort in all of this. He calls his friends worthless physicians and miserable comforters. About their wisdom and counsel, he says, your maxims are proverbs of ashes. Job 13:4, 16:2, and 13:12. And you know what? Having read Job, I agree. His friends are worthless physicians and miserable comforters. They are not doing a very good job. The central issue is the long section of the book reporting the exchanges between Job and his friends is the inadequacy of conventional wisdom. The friends are, of course, the voice of Israel's conventional wisdom. Their points of view, perhaps in hardened form, is the conventional wisdom of the book of Proverbs. The righteous will flourish, the wicked will wither. The friends draw the obvious corollary. If you are not flourishing but withering, you must have done something wrong. Indeed, the friends are the voices of conventional wisdom in other times and places as well. If your life is not going right, it's your fault. If your life's not going right, fix it. They also demonstrate the peril of quoting all parts of the Bible as if they reflect God's point of view. According to the book of Job, what Job's friends say at considerable length reflects a point of view that not only the character of Job and the author reflect, but God also rejects. Job 31, 8 through 41, 43. This display is interrupted by a brief dialogue between God and Job in 40, 1 through 5, then it resumes. Conventional wisdom, whether biblical or secular, offers an inadequate explanation of suffering. It fails to account for the way the world is ordered. Job's dialogue and encounter with God. Throughout the long central section, Job not only rejects the wisdom of his friends, but expresses a strong desire to meet God face to face, that he might confront God with the unfairness of his suffering. Job's desire is granted, but the meeting turns out different than he had imagined it. The last 5 chapters contains God's answer to Job, expressed in the most remarkable nature poetry in the Hebrew Bible. God answers Job out of the whirlwind in a series of rhetorical questions. God displays the wonders of creation to Job, the foundations of the earth, the sea, the dwelling place of light, the storehouses of snow and hail, the constellations, clouds and rain and lightning, lions, mountain goats, deer, the wild ass and the wild oxen, the ostrich, the warhorse, the hawk, and the eagle, and ultimately the mythological sea monsters like the behemoth and leviathan. This is Job 38, 1 through 41, 34. No, I'm sorry. This is Job 40, 5 through 4 through 5. Oh, no, I've got my notes wrong. Hang on. I think I skipped a note. I did. I skipped a note. Okay. So what I just read with the behemoth and the leviathan is Job 38, 1 through 41, 34. And that's the display that is interrupted by a brief dialogue between God and Job in 41 through 5. Then it resumes. The one that I skipped is that God also rejects the conventional wisdom. That is explicitly in Job 42, 7. Okay. It's a long chapter. Okay. The language is marvelous, the display magnificent. The effect of the latter is twofold. On the one hand, the display speaks of the absolute difference, though not distance, between the creator and the created. On the other hand, it speaks of the world of undomesticated nature, the non-human world of creation beyond culture, as an epiphany or disclosure of God. The display stuns Job into smallness and silence. I am of small account. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand on my mouth. I have spoken once, and I will not answer twice, but proceed no further. That's Job 40, 4 through 5. Then Job does speak to God one more time. His words are the climax of the book. I have heard you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes see you. Which is Job 42, 5. Seeing God is classical language for a mystical experience. An intense, immediate experience of the sacred. In many traditions, the vision of God is the peak experience of the religious quest. Here, in the climax of the book, the author of Job presents the character of Job as having a first-hand experience of the sacred. I am persuaded that the author knew this kind of experience in his own life. I have difficulty imagining how he could have written the climax as he does if he had not. The contrast between hearing and seeing is the key to the book's climax. What Job heard was the conventional understanding of God as conveyed by tradition. No doubt he had accepted it until his time of calamity began. Explicitly affirmed in chapter 19, especially verse 18 and 20. Then it no longer made sense to him, despite the fervent repetition of it by his well-intentioned friends. It did not fit his experience, and he was resolute enough not to agree with those who put it forward. But his rejection of conventional wisdom called everything that he had once believed into question. Now, at the end of the book, he sees God. He experiences the sacred. In the words of an older translation, "But now my eyes behold you." Job 42:6. English translations commonly read, "I despise myself," instead of "I melt into nothingness." But the latter phrase better expresses the meaning. The meaning of the final line, "I repent in dust and ashes," is difficult to express. It does not mean that Job finally realizes he is guilty of great sins after all. Minimally, it means that the experience changed Job. Okay. Hang on. I got lost. No, I really am lost. Okay, there it is. What? Okay, I'm just going to start back. Job's experience of God gave him no new answers or explanations of the problem of suffering, but his experience convinced him that God was real in spite of the human inability to see fairness in the world. His experience of God changed him. "Therefore I melt into nothingness and repent in dust and ashes," he said. As his old construction of the world and himself melted away, he repented. That is, he changed. A century ago, William James made a distinction that perfectly illuminates the climax of the book of Job. The most brilliant and influential American psychologist and philosopher of his day, and brother of the novelist Henry James, James distinguished between second-hand and first-hand religion. Second-hand religion is religion as learned from others. It is religion as a set of teachings and practicings to be believed and followed. In other words, religious conventional wisdom. First-hand religion is a religion that flows from the first-hand experience of God. At the end of the book of Job, the main character moves from second-hand religion, from what he had learned, to first-hand religion. "I have heard of you with the hearing of the ear, but now my eye beholds you." So we would distinguish it just a little bit differently. We would call religion what he is calling secondhand religion, and spirituality what he is calling firsthand religion. Religion is other people's experiences, and spirituality is your experiences, which is what Science of Mind teaches. Not religion, but spirituality. Experience the divine yourself. Secondhand religion, as religious conventional wisdom, is not bad. It can and does produce good. The Spirit of God can and does work through it. Indeed, secondhand religion can be a sacrament of the sacred, but it is not the same as firsthand religion. The experience of the sacred shatters and transforms secondhand religion. This distinction also helps us to understand the dialogue and the conflict within ancient Israel's wisdom tradition. Israel's conventional wisdom, as seen in the cumulative effect of the book of Proverbs, is secondhand religion. Religion as an orderly set of teachings about how things are and how things go. The alternative voice of Israel's wisdom, the wisdom of Job and Ecclesiastics, is grounded in the experience of God. The conflict within Israel's wisdom tradition is one of two major conflicts within the Hebrew Bible. The other we have already seen, the conflict between the imperial theology of Egypt and Exodus theology, between the royal theology of Israel's monarchy and the message of Israel's prophets. The New Testament, which I call the Christian Testament because it's polite to which we now turn continues the stories of these conflicts. It does not resolve them, however. If anything, it intensifies them. It also names the central tensions and conflicts that run throughout subsequent Christian history. Okay, so depending on how things go tomorrow, I may start chapter 3 of this book, which, as I said, is, he calls it the New Testament. I'm going to call it the Christian Testament because I had a good teacher, which chapter 8 is reading the Gospel skit. If tomorrow is what it is, then I will do it next Saturday around 3:30. So we've got 3 chapters left. Okay, Borg is a lot. So that was chapter 7, reading the Bible again for the first time by Marcus J. Borg. Hope you enjoyed it.